Next person on the phone today, welcome to our new open forum program. Please go ahead with your call.
Hello, Chris. My question is in Deuteronomy chapter 28, where uh the first 14, 15 verses, God is speaking about blessing after blessing. And I believe from verse 16 on to the end are curses, all these curses. Now my
Mhm.
question is these pertain to the church during the tribulation period when God was not saving anybody in the church? It's as if God curse was upon the church during that time.
Yeah, 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 God, you're right. It's broken up. First four, excuse me, first 14 verses, blessing is upon Israel. And it's, this is speaking of Israel. Speaking of Israel, and we know Israel spiritually represents the church. So it would apply to the churches. And then God says in verse 15, which is like a transition verse, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Jehovah thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed or cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. So when we're thinking, okay, this is referring to the church, does the church have any identification with the city? The Bible likens it to Jerusalem, earthly Jerusalem. So in Jerusalem, in the corporate church, they'll be cursed. What about in the field? The church is in the field, it's in the world. And it has all these branches, all these ministries, all these outreaches to the nations. They're all cursed. They're all cursed. Once God ended the church age and judgment began at the house of God, verse 17, cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. And the basket would probably apply to fruits, and the store to grain, that kind of thing, which comes from harvest. And so their harvest is cursed. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. And that would be their own children, the fruit of their body, or spiritually, those that come into the congregations like children. And the fruit would also point to that, the fruit of the land, the fruit of the many churches all over the world. Curse. No blessing. And blessing identifies with salvation. The greatest blessing is, as God says in Psalm, I think it's Psalm 133, Psalm 133, the end of verse 3, upon the mountains of Zion, for there Jehovah commanded the blessing, even life forevermore. Well, now no blessing, no salvation, no good hand of God upon you, no pleasure from God. He's taking no pleasure in anything that the church does in all their activity. It's not just every Sunday when the pastor gets in the pulpit, but that's included too. There's a curse upon the congregation. There's a curse upon the pastor preaching. There's another verse that says God will curse their blessings. You would think it's a blessing when they open the Bible. The pastor opens the Bible. All the members in the pews open their Bibles. Well, surely it's a blessing to read the Bible, but God has cursed their blessing. And he has cursed the sermon. There'll be no blessing upon the word preached. He's cursed the hearing because there's no hearing as far as in a spiritual sense upon the words preached, and everything else, the hymn singing, the praying, everything is cursed by God because the very act of conducting service is rebellious against God. He ended the church age. He ended the ministry of pastors. He caused the pastors to cease from feeding the flock. He ended the gathering of congregations within church buildings under the authority structure of churches. It's over. It's done with. He has disassociated himself entirely from it. And God himself is the essence of blessing. The Spirit of God is the essence of blessing. And if a church group or a people get together and they have all the trappings that were present during the church age, but they lack one critical thing, which is the Spirit of God himself, then what good is it? It's a vain exercise. It's an empty activity. It brings no blessing to anyone. And if it's broadcast on the radio, cursed are the airwaves. If it is printed, cursed would be the book, or the booklet or magazine. Every arm and branch of the church, every avenue of ministry they attempt is under the wrath of God. God will not bless it. He will not shine his face upon it in any way. That's what Deuteronomy is saying, and it's terrible. Terrible. Goes on, and I mean, you think I just went on a little bit, and that's nothing. Read Deuteronomy 28 from verse 15 until the end, which I think is like verse 68, over and over and over again, saying the same thing, that you are cursed, and that's the situation. You know, tragically, that's the situation we have today and have had in the churches for decades since the year 1988. There's been cursing, the curse of God upon the church's ministry. Does anyone seriously think that the world would be the laughing stock and mockery, or excuse me, that the church, well, the world is also at this time because God's judgment and curses upon them, but it started with the church. And does anyone think that the corporate church would be the laughing stock and mockery that it has become to all the world if God were with them? Would the countless reproaches that have been laid upon them have happened if God were there to defend them, to ward them off? No. It is because the church is basically the world entered in, calling themselves Christian, and God is not with them, and the blessing of God is not upon them in any way.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling and sharing. And let's go to the next person on the phone today. Welcome to our program. Please go ahead with your call.